Once upon a time in our village, there lived a man called Ume. Ume was a rich farmer, generous and respectful man. Everyone in the village respected and cherished him. Ume had two sons, Ike and Udo. Ike was his biological son, while Udo was his adopted son. Udo was 2 years older than Ike. While raising the kids, Ume took his time to observe their characters. He loved both sons equally, but he was intentional about his legacy. Ume lost his wife when Ike was 2 years old. He was left with the responsibility of raising the kids alone. He single-handedly raised his two sons. After some years, Ume became very sick. His two sons were by his side. They assured him that they would retain his legacy and carry on his business. Ume knew that two captains could not sail a ship at a time. He needed one person to manage while the other assisted. Initially, he intended to appoint Udo, his adopted son, as the manager because Udo was the older son, but Ike claimed to be the biological son and the rightful owner of his father's business. However, for a long, Ume had noticed the silent war between his two sons. Though they were diligent in their jobs, there was no peace between them. Even when their father was in his sick bed, they were still dragging who would replace their father. This silent war between his two sons has been bothering him for a long time. Despite his efforts to establish peace and love between them, they only pretend in the presence of their father. This problem began when they had a little misunderstanding some years back. Ike told Udo that he was the biological son. He told Udo to go and search for his biological parents. This statement hurt Udo so much, and Ike was seriously punished by their father when Udo reported him. Ume made it clear that he had no adopted or biological son. He only had two sons who he loved equally. It hurts Ike so much whenever his father says that he loved them equally. On the other hand, Udo often felt threatened by his fate after their father's death. When they noticed that their father had become seriously sick, they began to put more effort to please their father. First, Udo convinced all his father's workers they came to pray for Ume's recovery. Ike, having understood the handwriting on the wall, then came up with his own plan. He decided to be by his father's side steady. He began to cook, bath, and put his father through the daily business. However, Mr. Ume already knew what they wanted. They were fighting for his position. As an adult, he decided to come up with his plan. He decided to test their loyalty and love. One day, he called his two sons and told them he needed a favor from them. There was a seed in Oko he kept in Oba cave in the forest. Any of them that would be able to locate and get the seed for him will replace him. Oba cave was known to be very scary because of some superstitious stories surrounding it. Ume was surprised when his two sons vehemently agreed to embark on the journey. The next day, they both left early in the morning. Our cave was said to be very complicated, that some people may enter and never return because they may get lost. Udo picked numerous stones on his way to retain his movement. Ike packed ashes in his bag. When they got to the entrance of the cave, they followed different dimensions. Udo began to drop the stones, while Ike dropped the ashes little by little. Actually, there was no seed in the cave. This was Ume's plot with a wise man in their village. They were made to pass a series of tests. The first was to test their faith in the face of challenges. While in the cave, Udo saw an old man seated in the dark. Initially, he was scared, but he needed to get the seed. He approached the darkness. The old man told him to go back, for there was no seed. Udo responded that their father would never deceive them. He insisted that he would try first. Then he passed. The same man met Ike and told him the same thing. Ike brassly laughed at the old man. He replied to the old man that it was his plot with Udo. He would never give up, so he continued his journey. After some hours, Ike met another man who told him that his father had died. Initially, Ike was moved, but he wouldn't want to miss the only opportunity of retaining his father's properties. He ignored the man and continued his journey. When Udo was told that his father was dead, he completely ignored the man. Udo got to the end of the cave. Then he decided to go back. Then he saw another man. He wanted to ignore him, but the man called him by his name. He told Udo that he was chasing a mere shadow. Udo began to listen to him. He brought out some ayoro seeds, drew 3 lines on the ground and did some incantations. He told Udo that he needed to act fast before he would be eliminated. He lied to Udo that Ike had found the seeds. If Ike replaced their father, Udo would lose everything. He offered a knife to Udo to protect himself. Udo took the knife from him and began to head back. When Ike got to the end of the cave, he met a man who looked exactly like his father, but his appearance was not clear. The man asked him to sit down. Ike obeyed, and the man began to poison his mind. He lied to Ike that Udo had found the seed. His father's wealth and legacy is now at stake. If Udo replaced his father, then he will lose everything. Udo will convert everything his father had left for them to be his. Udo may even eliminate him. Ike was convinced that everything the man told him would happen. He gave Ike a knife to use as protection. Ike took the knife from him and began to head out. When Ike got to the entrance of the cave, he saw Udo holding a knife. He was more convinced that Udo wanted to kill him. Udo also thought the same. Ike dropped his bag and charged with his knife. Udo also did the same, and they began to fight. They fought for a very long time and tore their flesh with the knife. At a time, Ike got tired and dropped his knife because he had lost a lot of blood. Udo approached him and raised his knife to stab him, but he couldn't, so he dropped his knife also. The moment Udo dropped his knife, Ike instantly reached out to his knife and stabbed Udo in the belly. Udo held the knife while looking at Ike. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't utter a word. He couldn't believe that his brother would have the liver to stab him. Ike got up immediately and took Udo's bag and left. He got to a certain river and began to weep. He dropped the bag and was weeping profusely. What will he tell his father? He killed his only brother because of an unknown seed. Ike hurried back to the cave and saw Udo crawling out of the cave in the pool of blood. Ike immediately removed his waistband and tied it around Udo's belly. He raised him and carried him on his back. Ike ran as fast as he could to the nearest herbalist. Luckily, Udo was still alive. 3 days later, they returned home and found out that their father had died. They cried so bitterly because, if not for greed, they would have been by their father's side. When Ume heard that Udo and Ike stabbed each other because of an unknown seed, He was heartbroken. Before he died, Ume sold everything he had and gave out the money to the less privileged. Udo and Dike were disappointed in themselves because their foolishness pushed their father. They were left with nothing. After their father's burial, Udo and Dike teamed up and started building from the scratch. With their experience and their father's influence, they were able to grow back. Udo was the manager this time and Ike was assisting him. That has been their father's wish. Sometimes, siblings can be very provoking, but guess what? The love shared can never be denied. Let your ego slide sometimes because it may cost you everything you had worked for. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel.